Oh, watch me as I do this professional thing. Am I always wearing the same t-shirt? I decided today that I was going to try and boil down Facebook into a character, into the essence of what it actually is and what it might look like if it was a person. And I couldn't land on just one depiction of Facebook. Because on the one hand, there's the very personal kind of, sharing things, enjoying one another's company, encouraging others, photos of babies and animals and new job postings and all kinds of stuff. And then there's the inflammatory, well, anything posts. I'm not trying to get into it here, but, politically it's divisive. And personally it's divisive. People feel like they can criticize anyone in the comments feed. And so it winds up just growing this, fire. And I wanted to address what I thought about it. If you remember back, like my McDonald's one was like a frat boy, holding a shake and stuff. So, I mean, it wasn't real positive. There were definitely positive things about Facebook, and I'm going to focus on just about none of them. Oh, and the other part of Facebook, not the personal side with the photos and the encouragements and the posts and all these things. It is crazy invasive and records all this information and just pokes and prods into your life and injects little advertisements and it is just this giant corporate juggernaut that is kind of terrifying if you think about it. So that is kind of grim. I know. But I'm going to try and have fun with it as I go along. So when I think of the personal side and how it has our personal interactions with people, whether we know them or not, in the comments sections, it can be downright inflammatory. So I thought, what's more inflammatory than a Molotov cocktail? Almost nothing. I mean, it's like the very definition of inflammatory, maybe. Yeah, so a Molotov cocktail is one of these things where you take like a bottle. I don't even know what kind of bottle, just whatever, and then you put like something Bernie in it, and then you put a wick in the end, something big and like it looks like a ripped up T-shirt typically, or maybe bed sheet or something. And when that is ignited and thrown, it can be very destructive. Do not do this at home. The two kids who might watch this, that is a terrible idea. You'll burn down everything. It's horrible. That is the point of a Molotov cocktail. That it doesn't feel like that's the point of Facebook, but it sure. This is time lapse, of course, so I'm not moving this fast. But I wanted to make this pose like he's just gonna throw this flaming bottle. I think I succeeded in making it look kind of like he's just striking a weird pose, like da 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 da. I don't know. It doesn't. To me, it doesn't say he's gonna be tossing this thing. I don't know. So yeah, so I put a hat backwards. I don't know why I felt like a hat should go backwards on this character. But there's like a gas can next to him, which is an extremely foolish thing to do if you're like wielding fire. But I thought it was appropriate considering all the fire. And I thought, okay, I need to give him like a basis, something to stand on. And since this app, it's just this service, kind of is very divisive, inflammatory, I'm just gonna go ahead and symbolize that as a bunch of skulls and bones that he's standing on, which is grim, but I just, I feel pretty strongly. Like I said, you're going to see my bias pretty heavily. I just added some tone because it was, just lines and I wanted to get it a little bit more solid. I wanted to get the lighting right because the light's got to come from somewhere, right? So it's got to come from that side. I think that that's pretty successful. And I made a lot of like Polaroid type things falling off of him or in the background. I don't know. It's to symbolize the fact that somehow we have a lot of our lives stuck in there for good or ill. I tried to at one point delete my Facebook, and I got in there and they make you do like a 30-day waiting thing. Not a bad idea, because I realized there's a lot of stuff in there that I really wish I could get out of there. Like, videos and photos of early shots of Obi, and because that's when it started. I mean, I adopted this app way back when it was far less toxic and a little bit more dorky. I was having a heck of a time drawing this guy's expression and his face, and I'm not sure it was still that successful. I wanted to make it look like he was laughing and kind of cackling, you know, like I don't know, like a villain. Gosh, I really am pretty dark about this. I settled on this kind of facial expression, and I liked it sort of because it looked like the jaw of a skull to me, and it was just a little. It's so grim. It's very grim. Once again, he looks like he's striking some kind of pose or a dance move, or I don't know. It's bad. There, I'm gonna brand it. Brand it with the F. That is going to go away, I'm certain, soon, because it's Meta now. It's not Facebook. So this is like, at the time of this video, I think it's technically Meta, but we haven't seen the branding. We haven't seen anything roll out. So yeah, I keep drawing these things and then turning down the opacity and then drawing over the top of them again. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to solidify all the lines with actual what looks like ink now. And it's through that process, it winds up looking more and more solid. I wind up getting more and more familiar with the forms, and I like what, you know, where it's going in general. Still hate the pose. But I had just gone so far down the road. If this was for a client, I would have totally redone this by now. But it's just for me and you. It's just for us. And you get it. You get me. This is just the first of 2 drawings. So when I move on to the next one, I'm probably going to make a score more mistakes, and we'll talk about those too. The gas can in the fire right there is driving me nuts. I just, from a purely logical sense, it seems like a completely stupid thing to do, but in a way, it seems to fit. Sometimes I thicken up some of the lines like this, just darken them up. From an artistic standpoint, it gives some weight to certain parts, and I really hate the way I did it around the face there, but it is what it is. Recorded for all time, at least until the internet dies. Gonna go ahead and create some of this white hot fire, and I'm not doing an outline around the fire because I thought that it needed to feel a little bit more separated, because it's going to be the light source and whatnot. Sometimes I don't do outlines around things to make it feel completely different, because this ought to be. Here's our branded blue, and I did not go look up Facebook's actual blue. I totally took a guess at it, and I don't even know if I'm close. I'm not even going to bother to check. But right now, since I did his jeans and his hoodie as the same color, it kind of looks like he's just wearing a onesie, like a big Facebook onesie. I decided to give him those fingerless gloves because that's what hooligans wear, right? At least from the 80s. If you were really cool or a hooligan, you wore fingerless gloves. Yeah, here we go. So I start, you know, it looks like a onesie. I got this though. I'll change it. This cool like lighting from the side that I do, I think is marginally successful. I kind of like it. It's, you know, anytime you use blue and orange together, they kind of set each other off. It's called complementary color scheme in the world of color nerds. There I start to desaturate his pants a little bit so it looks a little less like a onesie. And this is fabulous. This is a fantastic dance move that he's got here. Yikes. Fire. Fire is kind of a pain. I have about 5 different ways that I draw or paint fire. In this case, I'm going for the kind of really graphical, like, I don't know, it's very kind of jagged at times. But fire, as it gets further away from its source, is darker, and because that heat energy is dissipating. So when you're drawing or painting fire, it ought to be brighter towards its center. And now that I'm saying that, I doubt it. But I always do that. I always doubt myself. But it should be still very bright. It's fire, so I usually take it to nearly white. I hate using white in general. Just I don't even like to use black. You'll see in a minute. I changed the lines around this character, around Facebook, to be not black, because sometimes it's just too heavy. It's too much of an extreme. Wow, his leg is really short. I meant to make it look like he was bending that leg that is his left leg, the one that's on our right, but it's not that great. There it is. There's the color that is of the lines that is no longer black. And it kind of softens it up a bit. It gives us a feeling that it's all kind of still part of the same character. I always like to give him this little background too. This is like a brush in Clip Studio Paint that tends to mimic some kind of pastel. And, giving this light, getting the light along the side of the body, big part of like selling this illusion, and moderately successful. Yeah, I think that this is, I think this is successful. I think it's silly, even though it's a bit of a dance move. Let's talk about the corporate side of Facebook now, the one that's very scary in a different way. I usually start these things, like I said before, with some kind of blob. And then this one, I knew I just wanted something vaguely tank-like and machine-oriented. And I wanted it to be like from a worm's eye view, just looking up at it as it kind of stomps around the landscape. And I wanted those amorphous little blobs on the left, those are kind of like clouds. I could just feel that, like fumes or whatever, belching something unhealthy. So yeah, I just go ahead and I start blocking in tones. It's called blocking in, and I carve away at these designs with my eraser and just kind of explore until something really jumps out at me, and then I make it happen from there. So it's kind of like interpreting my own marks. But I am imagining I really wanted that large shape on the top right to be kind of a TV screen or a monitor. I went for a TV screen because I don't know, I'm ancient and I think of, TV screens as still being round and whatnot, even though I have no round TV screens anywhere else anywhere in my world right now. I just thought it looked kind of neat and it's recognizable. And I wanted tank treads. And so you can see those kind of starting there because nothing's more kind of like crushy than tank treads, like driving over stuff. It's utterly destructive. And so I wanted this kind of like what I like to call, and I've heard people say before, a worm's eye view. So if you're looking up at something, it's like the opposite of a bird's eye view. A bird's eye view, you're looking down and it's, everything kind of recedes away from you. Well, if you're a worm and you have to look up at everything, the perspective is very different. It's exactly opposite. It's going to be a different video where I'm going to try and tackle like maybe a different way of teaching perspective than you see most people do. I want to be different about it, obviously, but this kind of worm's eye view is, I think, pretty exciting. But I wanted it to be like a dramatic effect, and like, of course, there's a big eyeball on the front of it. Why? Because it's watching you. I don't know. That's where my brain went. So I'm like, it's watching you. Also, there's like smokestacks, but all a bunch of pipes and stuff that I'm adding in here because I don't know. It seemed the right thing at the time. Just like utterly unknowable and eldritch machinations that make this thing whatever juggernaut it is in all of our lives. So this is all the little components and hoses and couplings and tanks, like as in storage tanks for something. Different smokestacks. And I didn't go look up what a tank tread looked like. I just wanted to kind of wing it out of memory. Because this is speculative art. It's not meant to be like some kind of blueprint for a real thing or a book cover. It's just me goofing off. And sometimes you have to do that regardless of making a YouTube video or whatever, just goofing off. Set yourself free. People ask me, how do you overcome artist's block? I'm like, I don't overcome it because I don't have it. And it's not because I'm special. It's because I just draw what I want to draw. I create what I want to create. And it's, if I'm doing it for an audience, then that's a different feeling. Then I might experience a little bit of that. But for the most part, I'm free from expectation, so I can create whatever the heck I want. And that's kind of huge. If you're constantly worrying about what other people think of you or think of your art, you might find some paralysis there. You might lose ideas, Oh, I don't want to do a picture of a snake because it frightens my grandma. She thinks I'm, a really bad person when I draw snakes. And so then there goes an entire chunk of your visual library that you really enjoy and wanted to draw to begin with. And now, because grandma doesn't like it, you've just limited yourself. When honestly, grandma probably will be fine with it. Grandma just wants you to enjoy your life. I think deep down she does. I can't really speak for her, but I think that for myself, if I was a grandma, I would want you to enjoy your life. If I was your grandma, I would want you to enjoy your life. Just guessing. I'm thinking that other eyeballs need to be added. So like one in the big screen, like the television screen, monitor thing, and a bunch of them all over the sides of it. That's what these little circles are right now. They're kind of dotted all over the place because, if it's watching you in one way, out of the front, it's probably watching you in 20 others in ways you don't even know. And that's what these kind of signify. I needed to work the logo into it somehow, but it's truly off screen, so it kind of winds up looking a little weird because I'm drawing this thing that's way up off of what you can't see because I can only capture a certain amount of my monitor. There's that. But you know, I'm like, of course I want this megalithic, this monolithic logo to be like jammed into the back of this giant tank-like creature. Because what's branding without a logo on it somewhere? So let's, you know, get used to the Facebook logo while it still exists. And one of the problems I was seeing at this point in the drawing was it wasn't feeling huge. It was feeling somewhat like a toy, like, I don't know, like a Tonka or something. So I was like, okay, let's add some giant buildings, because I mean, this thing is truly devastating the landscape. Let's make it truly devastating the landscape. Maybe a little acid rain, because there's that. That's like a creepy way of thinking about the fallout from all of the things that it crushes and ruins. So once again, I drop the opacity and I'm going to keep drawing. But what I need to do is add believable details that give this thing some scale, though. So I'm going to wind up putting rivets in and adding more like details, mechanical details that would only be seen on a massive scale. And I think it starts getting more and more like this thing that I'm drawing. I don't know what that is. That antenna, that's like no antenna I've ever seen in my life. I don't know what I'm doing there. It doesn't matter, because I'm just enjoying myself. I'm enjoying the process of creating a thing. And at least it's all on the page now. It's all on screen. Hooray. That's my service to you. That's free. And this must have been when, you know, me thinking or something. Oh, there we go. A little bit of zoom. So then I'm thinking to myself when I was drawing this, if one screen is good, multiple screens is even better. This is my philosophy in my actual studio. You can't see this right in front of me, but I've got two screens, and sometimes I set up a third here, and then I can also have an iPad next to me, which I watch some stuff on because I don't want it to, whatever, bog my computer down. Screen time. So yeah, I'm putting eyeballs in the screens, you know, it's watching you, you're watching it back. Lots of antennas. Is that the right way to say that? These videos take hours, and so, you know, my level of brain power can vary wildly. So here's the wreckage that it's tromping across, it's driving across. I feel like I could have put some more buildings in here, but man, it's just a pain. And I didn't want to be here for 12 hours just drawing this one thing that was kind of like a fun, speculative, I don't know. But then, you know, there's tank treads. I'm like, yeah, what do tank treads look like? They just, I guess, are lines, but I didn't want to draw them like straight lines parallel to one another, because that's not fun. That's not exciting. I wanted them to kind of like be like, they just drove over half the world. So they're like, they're like ratty and kind of hanging at different angles one from another. And I feel like that's a successful kind of, this is a jumble. This has been built over, you know, years and years and years. And you're kind of trying to make it look of an immense scale, unimaginable engineering. You get kind of, you know, you'll see it in a bit here where I start drawing much thinner lines. And it's definitely a welcome add-on to this whole thing, because it was just looking a little mishmashy not comic book, but it was looking more like a coloring book. Not that that's bad. In fact, I've always wanted to do like a full-on coloring book. I should do a Kickstarter. Who would kickstart a coloring book? I don't know. Maybe there have been people that kickstart coloring books. I didn't know when I launched my custom deck of poker cards that, you know, that over 1,000 people would back it for over $80,000. That was mind-blowing. I'm still kind of reeling, waiting for it to be printed. At the time this video is created, we're still waiting for them to be printed. And then it's going to take forever for them to ship as well. So they got a bunch of people chomping at the bit. I'm chomping at the bit. It's an exercise in patience. Yeah, and I'm not that patient. I'm into instant gratification, and this is not it. This would be like what's the opposite of instant? Delayed. Thank you. Delayed gratification. You're very helpful. It's like Blue's Clues. You ever watch that show, Blue's Clues, where the guy, Steve, is in front of the screen and he says, "What's the opposite of instant?" And then, the kids are screaming at the screen. Of course, they're screaming, delay, delay, delayed. And he's like, I wonder what it is. Blue, do you know what it is? And they babble back and forth. And the kids are just bringing their volume up more and more and more, screaming delayed at Steve. And Steve is just not getting it. Finally, he arrives at that conclusion. Oh, yeah, thanks, kids. And so that's basically what happened in my brain as I was doing this. Steve and Blue were in my head, helping me figure out what the opposite of instant was. Well, it's delayed. Here we are. These are the tiny lines that are starting to come in. These really start to nail it down for me. Like, oh, it's feeling much larger now. I can do all these little tiny scribbly bits. The eyeball that felt too whacked out and large, I start to redraw these kind of things that are like what we call a patina to a surface or whatnot, is like the apparent quality or how something might feel, but you can only see it. That's what's going on here, kind of giving everything that patina, that scratched, dented, dinged, riveted, contoured look. There's a lot of, sorry, I'm drinking right in front of the microphone, and the coffee, like it's my 5th cup, and I'm just like humming. Bzzz. If I post this, considering all the negative things I've said about Facebook, if I post this on Facebook, how much traction do you think it would get? Do you think Facebook knows? I'm not that important. That is just not a thing. Time to make all the screens, like all the eyeballs start working and just blocking in color. We went through the penciling, the inking, now we're blocking in color. And this is kind of the tedious part. This is the part that, if I was a wealthy artist, I would just hire somebody else to do all this, all the filling in of stuff. Flats. Some people call it flatting in the comics industry. Here's all we're going to start picking apart the colors now for all the tubes and things. I didn't go, since I wanted the F to be white, we already know that I don't like white. So I'm going to minimize that by just giving it a color that is just plain lighter than everything else. And then I'm going to work some highlights into it later that'll make it feel more like a white. The whites of those eyes are not white right now. They're this kind of, what is that, a tan? A taupe? Maybe not a taupe. What is taupe? We as artists generate the most pretentious names for things. Do you know that purple isn't actually a color? No. It's like saying, that Frankenstein's not actually the name of the monster. It's Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein's monster. Nobody cares. Shut up. People want to call it Frankenstein. They know what they mean. Well, when somebody says purple, us art nerds that are really into color, like, do you know that purple's not actually a color? It's actually violet. I got to this and it started feeling like a toy again. And I'm like, okay, this shouldn't feel like a toy. I need it to feel gross. I need it to feel, eroded and splattered and rusty. Of course, I didn't go like the rust color or anything, but giving it this kind of like, for lack of a better word, patina. I know I've already used that word, but it's an important word. Giving it this patina at this stage really makes it feel a little bit more real and monumental. It's no longer a really white F. It's very kind of, splotched green. I tried to mimic like watercolor splotching, and that's what this is. This is me mimicking what an actual watercolor would look like. It's kind of a challenge. Here's the white outlines. Okay, so this is done. This guy is done. This is the rampaging Facebook you kind of think of when it's spying on you and keeping track of you and, feeding you all kinds of information you didn't think you actually needed. In all of its stompy, rompy glory. Just running roughshod over all of our actual civilization, and showing no signs of slowing at this point. Thank you for hanging out to the end of the video. It really means a lot to me that you would still be here checking this content out, and if you like it, consider hitting the thumbs up. And if you really like it, subscribe to the whole channel if you haven't already. Remember, you are creative, so create, especially if it's a better day for someone else.